Hello, and welcome to Exposed News Outlet, where we shed light on topics that matter most. I'm your host, Andrea. Today, we're exploring the Epstein survivors have come forward and are speaking out with the new bombshell revelations in the Epstein Files case of the elite pedophile ring that Republicans seem to be covering up. As we navigate the complexities of our world, it's essential to stay informed and engaged. By subscribing to our channel, enabling notifications, and sharing our content, you're supporting our mission of providing thought-provoking insights and inspiring positive change. Thank you for being part of our community. For those interested, I will leave my GoFundMe link if you're able to help grow our resources. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get to the video. Epstein survivors speak out. Epstein survivors have consistently said their voices are being silenced. Here are a few of the most powerful and credible quotes. Virginia Giuffre Roberts. I was trafficked to many powerful men. One of them was Prince Andrew. He knows what he has done, and I hope he comes clean. Jeffrey and Ghislaine were both equally involved in the abuse. She was the madam, recruiter, and participant. Maria Farmer, artist and whistleblower. I reported Epstein and Maxwell to the FBI in 1996. They ignored me. I'm the original whistleblower. No one listened until it was too late. Elaine, sadly, they went on to victimize more than 1,000. I'm sure it's multiple thousands, but quote, they don't care about us. They only protect the powerful, end quote. Sarah Ransom, quote, I tried to kill myself twice after what Epstein and his circle did to me, end quote. And, quote, they're trying to make Maxwell a victim, but she was the architect of our hell, end quote. Number 2, Trump as John Doe 174. What the files reveal. Unsealed court documents from 2023 confirmed that Donald Trump was identified as John Doe 174 in filings connected to the Virginia Giuffre versus Ghislaine Maxwell case. The key facts. Giuffre's testimony said she was instructed to flirt with Donald Trump. She also said she was not raped by him. Trump flew on Epstein's jet multiple times according to flight logs, including a 1997 trip with both Maxwell and Epstein. A 2002 New York Magazine quote from Trump. I've known Jeff for 15 years, and he's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side, end quote. A now dismissed 1994 Jane Doe lawsuit alleged that Trump raped a 13-year-old at Epstein's Manhattan home. The accuser withdrew the suit just before the 2016 election, citing death threats. And actually, I think that was Katie Johnson's testimony. But they, like I said, they allegedly turned it around on her and made her seem to be some kind of drug-addicted prostitute and tried to threaten her with death threats and stuff. Crazy. And sadly, it is without a coincidence that more than now 5 people connected to this case have died from supposedly unaliving themselves, which I don't believe one bit. And Virginia Giuffre was one of them. So Alleged witness Tiffany Doe corroborated the event in an affidavit, but the mainstream media ignored it. Despite the above, no DOJ investigation has ever meaningfully scrutinized Trump's involvement, even though others like Prince Andrew have faced civil cases and been removed from public roles.
Thank you for coming today. I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and today we are here with the first victim to have documented proof that she filed a police report against Jeffrey Epstein. In 1997, Alicia Owens, who is here with me today, filed a police report with the Santa Monica Police Department alleging that Jeffrey Epstein committed a sexual battery against her when she met him at the Shutters Hotel in Santa Monica, California. Mr. Epstein said that he was a representative of Victoria's Secret and that he was interviewing and auditioning models to appear in the Victoria's Secret catalog. When Alicia realized that Epstein was using his position to touch her in a sexually inappropriate way, she left and reported him to the police. The details of what happened to Alicia in that room with Mr. Epstein were explained at a press conference that Alicia and I held in 2020. We will forward those details to the press who request them. Unfortunately, no prosecution ever took place. Alicia alleges that she would have been willing to testify against Jeffrey Epstein if the criminal case had been filed, but that never happened. Alicia feels that if Epstein had been forced to face the consequences of his criminal behavior at that time, perhaps many other women and children could have been spared from the sexual abuse and sex trafficking that many were forced to suffer. The failure of the criminal justice system to bring Jeffrey Epstein to meaningful justice was repeated in the cases of many other victims over decades after Alicia's experience with him, and resulted in Jeffrey Epstein's misconduct becoming worse and leading to child sexual abuse and trafficking of underage girls. It included his friend and co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction for conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in sexual acts, conspiracy to transport minors to participate in illegal sexual act, transporting a minor to participate in illegal sexual acts, sex trafficking, conspiracy, and sex trafficking of a minor. She was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for her crimes. Now, decades later, the public and many of Epstein and Maxwell's victims are insisting that they want to know how Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were able to get away with their crimes for so many years. They also want to know who else may have enabled them or assisted them in their sexual exploitation and trafficking of women and children. They believe that the answers are in the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York and the files of the former United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida and the State Attorney's file in Miami. The battle to learn the truth of what really happened by releasing the files is now in the news almost every day. While the political class takes sides in this battle, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell are often ignored, and the toll that this is taking on them emotionally is often just a footnote rather than a focus of many stories. To date, a few of the more than estimated 1,000 victims of Jeffrey Epstein have decided to break their silence concerning what they believe should happen now and the aggravated trauma that they are experiencing because of the constant reporting of Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Maxwell's names and the allegations against them. We understand and respect the decision of most victims and survivors to remain silent, and not become embroiled in the court of public opinion. There are very good reasons not to become involved in what is happening. However, there are also good reasons for victims to break their silence and share with the public their opinions of what should happen next in this battle for truth, transparency, and justice. Decisions being made now by those who have the power to make them, and those decisions are affecting victims' lives and increasing their emotional suffering. Today, Alicia Owens has decided to be one of the survivors who will share her thoughts about some of those decisions. Once again, she is showing her courage by continuing to speak out about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. I am sure that more victims will also break their silence in the future.
Number 3, red flags. Media and legal systems covering for Trump and Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell's image makeover. She has done multiple interviews in prison, including the Mail on Sunday, claiming she's a victim. Fox News and other right-wing media are trying to paint her as a misunderstood or persecuted, possibly to divert attention from Trump's deeper role. Maxwell's sentence, 20 years, was light compared to the scope of her crimes, and she's in a relatively privileged federal prison. But since then, she was moved to what is described as a luxury camp. Potential deal to protect Trump. There are unconfirmed but credible theories that Maxwell might cooperate with authorities, as she has been doing, to avoid further charges or protect her assets, possibly throwing others under the bus, except, of course, Trump. This pattern mirrors others. Trump's longtime fixer and associate, Roger Stone, is linked to Epstein through social circles and dirty political tricks. Number 4, Epstein's suspicious death. This was not suicide. Multiple independent sources cast serious doubt on the official suicide ruling. Nancy Grace, crime analyst, recently has been blasting the Trump administration.
Breaking news tonight. Message to Bondi. Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, release the files. The Jeffrey Epstein files, in case you need clarification. Bondi, you promised. Now, deliver. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
Here's several quotes from her. I've seen a lot of suicides. These marks on Epstein's neck are consistent with homicide. Epstein's autopsy versus private findings. Nancy Grace actually had Mark Epstein on her show the other day as well, and they were going over a lot of these facts, and she revealed a bunch of things that I didn't know about the markings on his neck being that consistent of a murder, not a suicide, but that was kind of bombshell as well. Epstein's autopsy versus private findings. The autopsy found broken hyoid bone, which is rare in suicide by hanging, and more typical in strangulation. Dr. Michael Baden, a forensic pathologist hired by Epstein's family, said, quote, "The evidence points to homicide, not suicide," end quote. Suspicious circumstances. The cameras malfunctioned. Certain parts are cut out of, or appear to be possibly even edited out of the video on Adobe. Guards falsified reports and were later given sweetheart deals. His cellmate was removed hours before Epstein's death. I'll have to include a clip here so you can see.
After one question regarding the Epstein files is answered, another one arises, and none of the answers seem genuine. Joining me now, an all-star panel to make sense of what we are learning tonight. Dylan Howard is with us, investigative journalist and author of Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales. But first, I'd like you to listen to this.
What you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did. A source had told me where the documents were being kept, Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by, hopefully all of them, Friday at 8 a.m., thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them. Director Patel is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
That from our friends at Fox 25. Dylan Howard, that was Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, promising, and I've got so many clips of her promising out the yin-yang, promising the release of the Epstein Files, and at that point, blaming the holdup on the Southern District of New York, which I accepted. I accepted that at the time. I had no reason to disbelieve her or to believe a nefarious intent on anyone's mind, anyone, including the Southern District. But now, really? She just referred to thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of files, and now we're being told there's nothing in there, so we're not releasing them. If there's nothing in there, why not release them, Mr. Howard?
Well, this is a cover-up of epic proportions, and not just because of the national discord over the last week. That is, President Donald Trump's alleged ties to Jeffrey Epstein's. Alleged? No, we've known that for decades, and we've known that they had a friendship leading up to Epstein's 2005 investigation in Florida. Now, Trump obviously campaigned on a desire for transparency. This is the antithesis of it. The reality was that what was released in that so-called phase one of Epstein Files being dumped on the American public was nothing new. What we know is that there are tens of thousands of documents related to Epstein that the Southern District of New York, a division of the Department of Justice, and the FBI are refusing to release. How do we know that? Because one of the news outlets that I own, Radar Online, first sued in 2017 the FBI for a full and frank disclosure of these documents related to that 2005 case in Florida. At the time, Nancy, we were stonewalled. Believe it or not, the Southern District of New York invoked Jeffrey Epstein's privacy rights over those of the dozens of victims at the center of that case in Florida. Then Epstein dies. Still, the Southern District of New York wouldn't release the files. Fast forward to last year, and a US judge in the Southern District hands down a verdict against the news outlet Radar Online. The verdict there was that the information contained in those files could jeopardize any potential appeal of Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell. Well, that is now under appeal. And what is evident in our recently filed appeal is that there are more than 11,000 documents that have not been released to the public around this child sex trafficking ring. And one must ask themselves at this hour, is the rights of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell being protected over those of what the DOJ has now said are more than 1,000 victims of the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking ring?
Joining us tonight is a very special guest, Mark Epstein. This is the biological brother of Jeffrey Epstein, now dead. Mr. Epstein, thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
Mark, if I may call you that.
Sure.
You have been disturbed from day one about the claim your brother, Jeffrey Epstein, committed. You say that did not happen. Why?
Well, first of all, it was sort of like almost day two. What happened when I first heard that Jeffrey was found dead from apparent suicide, I heard it on CNN. The government didn't notify me, as they claimed. I heard it on CNN. And at first, I had no reason to doubt that because, I knew he was in jail. He was potentially facing a very long term. I knew he wouldn't want to live like that. He didn't have any children to worry about. Our parents are gone, and he wouldn't have to worry about me. So there was no reason to doubt that. But then the next morning, I had to identify his body because I'm the next of kin, and they did the autopsy. And so far, the same thing. I just assumed it was a suicide. But then the city pathologist who did the autopsy, with Michael Bottom, there's forensic pathologist on my behalf, witnessing this, they both came out of the autopsy room and they said they couldn't call it a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide. Now, that never appears in any government report, and no one's speaking about that the two qualified forensic pathologists who did the autopsy could not call it a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide. And then a few days later, Barbara Sampson, who was the chief medical examiner, she declares it was a suicide. And let's be clear, Barbara Sampson never saw the body. She wasn't at the autopsy, and after the autopsy was over that day, we claimed the body. So she never saw it. Just like Ash Patel made that statement that, because he's a prosecutor and everything else, he said, it's suicide when you see it. I mean, he said that in a congressional or a Senate hearing, under oath I would take. And he said, it's suicide when you see it. The first questions that came to mind was, well, how many suicides has he seen? Okay, and also, he never saw the body. He never saw the scene. I don't think he was at the scene of the crime that day, or I don't know if he was there afterwards, but that wouldn't matter. So it's like everything seems to be covering up the fact that the pathologist who did the autopsy wouldn't call it a suicide. Other people are calling it a suicide, ignoring these very qualified professionals. Dr. Bonin has done about 500 autopsies on prison deaths, and I'm not sure how many Dr. Roman did, certainly more than Cash Patel.
With us, everyone, is Mark Epstein. This is Jeffrey Epstein's brother, who doesn't have a dog in the fight, no skin in the game to opine as to whether Epstein committed suicide or not. But what he's saying is very, very disturbing. Day one, Mark Epstein, I was concerned about the markings, and I've prosecuted and investigated many, many homicides, more than I can count, and have investigated suicides as well to determine if they were homicides. And the first thing that jumped out at me was the marking on your brother's neck, which was a straight across horizontal ligature mark. And when someone hangs themselves, even from the side of a bed, think about Robin Williams, who committed suicide by use of a ligature from a doorknob. Okay, this is not a traditional hanging, for instance, from an elevated point. Even from that type of suicide from a bed, you would see a U or a smiley marking on the neck. This was a straight horizontal ligature mark, indicative of someone strangling him with a ligature from behind. It's a subtle but important distinction, which I will discuss momentarily with a forensic expert. Let me understand, Mark Epstein, you just stated that you learned about the suicide allegation from TV?
Yeah, I was actually in Norfolk, Virginia, having breakfast at a restaurant, and the television was on, tuned to CNN, and I saw my brother's picture appear, and they said that he was found dead from an apparent suicide. That's how I learned about this. I mean, the Justice Department report, they said they notified me. They did not. There's a lot of errors in the Justice Department report.
Why would they have lied about that?
Oh, they're trying to make it look like a suicide.
Why? Why do you believe the government? And I'm not one for conspiracies, Mark, at all. Why? Because I don't think people can keep their yaps shut long enough to maintain a conspiracy. That's why. But in this case, the refusal to release the files that were promised to us months ago, promise after promise after promise, the confusion around the homicide, the edited video. And again, we're hearing from DC, well, there's nothing in the files. Well, if there's nothing in the files, release the files. We have got, I think now, 4 connected to your brother's case. Four. Virginie Jeffrey, your brother, his French counterpart, according to law enforcement, and 2 other alleged victims. Now, 5 people commit. Can that possibly be a coincidence, Mark Epstein?
Well, there's also other things that raise the question. Like also a few days after the death, Bill Barr, the then Attorney General, came out publicly and stated that he saw the video and he saw that nobody went in or out of the tier, and that convinced him it was a suicide. And when I heard that, I thought, this is ridiculous. I thought, why is the Attorney General himself watching this whole night-long video? Couldn't he have somebody in his office watch it and say, hey, Bill, nobody went in or out? That was number one. And number two, to assume that it was a suicide because nobody went in or out when there were 12 other prisoners on that tier that would not have to go in or out of that door if they were going to kill somebody on the tier. And I was told that cell doors were left unlocked that night. And I was also told by somebody who's familiar with the prison that they weren't surprised to hear that. So, and also to think that somebody could get to Jeffrey's tier, go inside, kill somebody, and then leave completely undetected, it's just like a stupid statement. That's not what you base it on. We can't find out who the other prisoners on that tier were. When did they get there? And where are they now? There's been no interviews of all the prisoners on the tier, which would normally be done in a situation like that. There's no record of that.
Epstein's brother raises doubts. Mark Epstein has said publicly, my brother was killed. He didn't kill himself. Too many things don't add up. He also suggested powerful individuals had motive to silence his brother permanently, not only to protect their names, but to preserve an entire trafficking blackmail network. And he might be onto something here. I think I believe him. Conclusion, this is a pattern of protection for the powerful. This is not just about Epstein. It's about a system that protects predators when they are politically or financially valuable. Survivors are ignored. Powerful names like Trump are buried in the files, or aliases like John Doe 174 to avoid public scrutiny. Let me show these clips.
You asked me any other questions from here. Sorry.
Yeah, 100%. You're fine. You're fine. And again, this is why, before we started, I said any topics that you don't want to talk about, I'm down to not talk about them. And, certain details are yours and yours alone. So,
I'm happy. I will talk about everything, but it's just like,
yeah.
just
Yeah.
that specific time in my life. It's like, it was like very, very frightening,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's easier to, yeah. And then you tell me any other questions and I'll keep going.
Yeah. I know that Epstein had many locations that his operation was, happening at. There's the island that most people know about. He had a place in Florida. He had a ranch in New Mexico. I guess we can start with just the most known location. What was your experience at the actual island?
Well, Blair, they actually took me to all the properties. I was taken to New York, Caribbean, Palm Beach, Paris, and New Mexico. They took me to all of those places. So we can definitely touch on, to speak about each one. The Caribbean, arriving there was very isolated, of course, and they had our passports, and we couldn't really get away. And the first day when I arrived there, because when they took me from New York, so we would land on, I don't know exactly which island it was. It was obviously St. Martin's or St. Bart's. I think it was St. Martin's, but I'm not sure. And then a helicopter would take us from there to the island. And when we were on the island, what would happen is we'd just be called to his bedroom, like in the day. We were never called there in the night, which I think it's, like people think there was like alcohol and drugs. There was nothing like that. Even as a smoker of cigarettes, I had to smoke far away from everyone. I never saw anyone drinking alcohol on the island ever. I never ever witnessed one person drink alcohol. But we'd be called to his bedroom like 3 times a day. And on the first day, it was just me. And then the next day, like another girl was brought in. And then she started giving him a blowjob in front of me when we were watching a movie. But I just ran away because I got such a fright. So he sort of used to see how far he could sort of push people, I guess. Sorry, I get anxious about this.
Yeah.
But when we were taken to his bedroom, it was always pitch dark and ice cold. The temperature in there was ice cold, and it was like pitch dark. And and then he used to like force orgasms from, like, that's what he did to me. I don't know what he did to other people. And his penis was actually very small. Sorry to bring this up, but it was like the size of a mini lighter. It was very like just like frightening, like yeah, it just really messed with my mind, to be honest. Like a lot of people want to judge girls who are taken there and stuff, but they don't know what it's like being kidnapped by the most evil people in the world. And people want to say I was a prostitute. I was never a prostitute. I've never been offered money for sex. I mean, I had someone try to marry me and plonk a 4 million rand, like a $400,000 diamond on my finger, and I told them, no thanks, I don't want it. I'm not a prostitute, and I want people to understand that.
Do you keep in touch with any of the other victims? Because I think what's lost with the Epstein story is, we hear a lot from different politicians, whether they're using the topic to, be elected, a lot of them use it in their campaigns, and then they get in and they flip, which has been very disappointing. And we hear people talking about the people who may be on this client list, but there are over, if I'm not mistaken, over 1,000 known victims of the operation. And so they aren't speaking out, and you can see the stakes, the high stakes. Unfortunately, the lovely woman, Virginia, who came forward and has been one of the more known victims, she passed away recently after posting that she wasn't suicidal. And then lo and behold, God rest her soul, she gets hit by a truck.
Virginia and I used to speak, but that was a lie. Virginia and I used to speak. We've done many video calls, much like I'm speaking with you now. I've spoken to her. We were on the phone together. But then about 2 years ago, I was told, she messaged me and she said that she's not going to be on her phone anymore, and I must get in touch with her through her husband's email address. But we sent a few emails back and forth, and then suddenly she just sort of like slowly, I didn't hear from her anymore. And I can also understand why, with she was being inundated, I'm sure, with people wanting to ask her questions and the whole thing, and also I think she ended up having to see put on pills, as what I've heard. A lot of people who go through tremendous stress. When I got back from Epstein, I was put on 3 tranquilizers a day. I understand it. I don't do any pills anymore. This was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. They put me on 3 tranquilizers a day. That's why I'm also very anti-pharmaceuticals and things. But, I was in touch with, I'm still speaking to Maria Farmer, thank goodness. She's an amazing woman. Sarah Ransom and I used to speak, but not anymore. There have been some strange things going on with a lot of I used to speak to even like Michelle Lecarte. I've spoken to quite a lot of the victims over the years, but everyone's sort of numbers have changed and people have gone quiet, and it's just, I've spoken to Annie Farmer as well. She's an amazing woman. Only Maria and Annie are the only ones who I'm still like in touch with.
How do you feel about the Trump administration's statements this week about Epstein and the supposed client list? What are your thoughts on how our current government is handling it?
I think it's horrific, actually, especially when Trump gained presidency promising the list. And then now he's like, oh, why are we still talking about that guy? It's like, how stupid do they think we are? Right. What I want to say to Trump is much like he said to others on The Apprentice, you're fired. Well, he should be fired. And Pam Bondi, well, hasn't Kash Patel and Bongini, apparently they're going to retire. I mean, not retire. They're going to resign. Yeah, well, they should. I mean, And apparently 2,000 people who work for NASA also resigned in the past week.
That's interesting. From NASA?
Yeah,
I didn't know
they're
that.
saying
That's
it's because of
interesting.
pay cuts. Yeah, look it up online. They say it's because of pay cuts. I don't think so. Yeah, 2,000 of the senior people at NASA are apparently resigning. The FBI are resigning. Why?
Right. I completely agree with you. I think it's been so disappointing is an understatement. I think it's very insulting. Specifically the way that Trump spoke about it. Are you still talking about this guy? As if there's something inappropriate or strange or incorrect about
Yes.
inquiring about justice for you and these other victims, and to know the truth about the people running this world. For me, I've always, known that he was connected to Epstein, as so many powerful people are. But this week has really solidified that.
We are watching an intentional erasure of truth. Survivors are being silenced, Maxwell is being repackaged as a victim, and Trump, who is literally named in court documents as John Doe 174, is being shielded. The media won't tell you this, but we will. Share this, amplify survivor stories, and don't let them rewrite history to protect predators. We are Exposed News Outlet, where truth has no agenda.